Good evening. Am I on yet?
Should be. Yep.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the August 2014 meeting of the Board of Directors of the Bella Vista Village Property Owners Association to order. If everyone would please rise, we'll have this Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everyone would remain standing, tonight's invocation is by Pastor Mark Vall from the Village Evangelical Free Church. Pastor.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, you are the God of all creation. You are the one from whom all blessings flow. Thank you tonight for the blessings of living here in Bella Vista, for the people with whom we share community and life on a daily basis. We ask your blessing on this board, on the work that they will do tonight, on their deliberations and decisions, and we pray your blessings on our community, that we would love one another, that we would care for one another, and that we would work together daily to make this the best possible place to live. And may you receive the glory. We ask this in Christ's name. Amen.
Please be seated. Are there any additions or deletions to the published agenda? Any proxies? Right.
Dave Barfield's proxy.
The minutes for the July 17th regular board meeting were circulated to the board. I'd entertain a motion for approval of those minutes. Any second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Good evening. Reporting on the activities of July. Okay. As far as the update on our Total E project, July's activity included working on the pro shop inventory along with the golf operations and accounting, tying those together, the sales along with the inventory control. We created the inventory classes, categories and subcategories. We started training on the price level for the system, started the discovery process for boat management and RV storage. These things have not been on a POS system in the past. They've all been just handled by hand. We've also started discovery on the RV park. This one was done through an Excel spreadsheet. And this will all be integrated along with reservations and all of that within Total E. We also worked on the facilities management side for recreation, and essentially what this means is having the ability online, not only for us, but also a member who would choose to get on our website to see what pavilions are open, when they're open, as well as meeting rooms and such as that. So it'll give a lot more visibility and a lot smoother transition for people to go from inquiry into a reservation. So far, August's activity is also working on setting up the gun range, which again did not have a POS system in the past. Have worked with Cogsdale to clean up the data and getting ready to export that into the Total E system, and as we've been reporting, the project is still on schedule. This is something that I found very interesting. The Propane Education and Research Council has approved a $930,000 request titled Propane-Powered Golf and Turf Equipment Demonstration Program. They're going to have some equipment that will be powered by propane that's going to be set up at some of the different golf courses. They're to have a test of that for a 12-month period. I think it's an opportunity to have a cleaner equipment, cleaner fuel burning equipment, And so I just picked that up with some of the news that I was going through, and I thought that was something worth passing on. So I certainly thought it would be a good idea to move in that direction. As far as some big projects that we're working on, mainly related to flood, this is some pictures of us continuing to work with the Country Club Pump House, adding here where we had built this up quite a bit from its previous level to try to get it up above the flood concerns that we've had. We had to put in a new irrigation pipe, of course, with it changing. We were required to move the stairs out of the wet well, so we had to go down in there and cut those out. Of course, this was confined space, and so we had to have all of the necessary equipment and trained personnel. We put the pump skid back in place and put the roof back on. We did the electrical installation. A lot of these things we did in-house so that would be more cost savings to us. Also, an area that had substantial damage and we were concerned about continual damage was the area that going to number 11 at Burksdale. There was substantial undercutting along that whole heel down through there, and we were very concerned that if we have another one that it could pretty well take out that whole path through that area. So we have done quite a bit of work. We removed the trees, I went through, brought some of the shelf rock down, widened the area, have brought now riprap and rebuilt the area down below here. And we are now, the next step will be to put a concrete, essentially a concrete curbing all the way from the top of the hill all the way down to the drop off, which is about a little over halfway down that hill. We hope that this will keep the water from coming up against. We've tried to reroute this water so that it's not going straight into the path, which was almost at a 90-degree angle. And that's what started all of this. So now we've got a wider area to slow the speed of the water down, as well as we've redirected the water. And so hopefully this is going to be a much more resilient to flooding, as well as be safer for the golf carts. Another thing, this just happened today, but I wanted to go ahead and put it in there. This is a couple of professional photos of our Tanyard Creek, what they're calling the Trail Rapids Bridge, which was right there close to the rapids, if you're familiar with it, coming out of the Windsor Dam. This is what the bridge looked like after the August 7th, 2013 flood. Essentially tore this down. As you can see, these I-beams completely bent through here. The Ozark Hill hikers presented me today with a $500 donation towards the rebuilding of this. So appreciate them taking on that as a part of their club donations. And just to give you a quick update, we of course went out for a grant working with AGFC to rebuild the Tanyard Creek. This whole area, if you're familiar with this trail, has suffered a lot from the floods over the last 5 years, and has washed a lot of areas out, has caused some of the bluffs to fall. We had to take some of the trail out of service. And so now we're looking at doing more of a natural stream bank remediation through here that is supposed to be more resilient to flooding. And so we're working with that. So we got a grant to pay about 2/3 of that. So this money will certainly help as far as our part of this. We replaced 840 foot of 6-inch AC pipe, replacing it with PVC. And we certainly have talked quite a bit about AC pipe over the years and the problems that we face with it. This is just another picture showing that we've also added in a fire hydrant to the area, or replaced a fire hydrant to the area. Dealing with the AC, the board approved a U of A testing for a 2-year period to test samples that are taken throughout the village of the AC pipe to see what type of degradation has been going on. Industry had generally believed that there was about a 40-year life. There's certainly a lot of AC pipe out there that's now 50, 60, 70 years old. And so we had been planning to do replacements. That's been one of the things that had been recommended to us by engineers to help reduce our water loss. We're finding, though, that in a lot of these areas that the integrity of the pipe does not seem to be what's caused the leaks. There seems to be other factors that have caused the leaks in the past around this AC pipe. So instead of starting just to replace the AC pipe without any real basis for replacing it other than the suspicion was that it was failing, we are doing a 2-year test, taking these samples, and we'll decide whether or not the areas need to be replaced, and some of that could have to do with soil composition. So we'll know a lot more about that by the end of this test. Water main breaks, of course, all days and times. Also put in some new water meter installations. Just some work, examples of the work that goes on during the month. This is just some work on our park benches. We did have to replace some areas on our Kingsdale miniature golf carpet. This had just been done, I think, like 2 years ago. So these just don't last long with the, I don't know if it's the amount of play or just the way that they get treated. This is just where we've doing some of that work. The Highlands Club fire suppression dry pendant replacement, I mentioned to the board, brought this to you back about 5 months ago, asking for money to start redoing these fire suppression pendants. That this is something that our test that was supposed to be done every 10 years has shown that these need to be replaced, and so we're replacing those en masse throughout the village over the next few months. We did add an upgrade to our solar dock fish attracting lighter. This is at the one over on Lake Ann. And so we replaced the lights that are under the dock so that you can use them for fish attracting to fish at night. We had to replace the pool pump there at the Kingsdale Pool for the water slide. We were required to replace the wiring in our golf maintenance building for the new lift, for the one that we had to replace, and this is the lift for the equipment lift. Playground equipment, so we have to paint this probably every 4 to 5 years, and this was the time for this equipment. As you can see, it does wear out there in the sun. There is a lot of use on these things. Had another one of these. We regularly have to redo these for them being backed into. Also, just issues with our restaurants. This is the Country Club, a water heater repair. Also had to do some work with the hood exhaust at the Country Club. Redoing some of our showers, refurbishing the kiosk around the lakes, repainting signs around our facilities, constructed a new one around the Glowing Springs Trail. The gangway, as I said, we're just trying to give you examples of just the continuing things that it takes to run a village. Fence repairs at the Kingsdale Pool. We had to redo the drain at the Metfield Pool. Painting of our Metfield Pool, gun range structure repairs. ADA work, we continue to do to change the ADA closures and installation of the doorknobs, moving fixtures around to make them ADA compliant. Storm damage, we didn't have a lot of rain, but we did have some wind events during the month of July that caused damage around the village, electricals, as well as mostly just from falling debris, limbs and such. We continue to have to remove dead trees, as we've been talking about, and we are concerned now that we're getting close to the budget that we had set. Wall of Honor, working on the fountain water supply controls here. Also requires quite a bit of work. The fountain has to be cleaned and repaired about every 3 months, it seems. The fly tyers have bought some commercially built fish habitat structures for Loch Lomond, and we put those in along with them and the manufacturer who came on site and helped us to assemble them and then showed us how to sink them appropriately. Also, we worked with them to sink cedar trees at Loch Lomond. We reached the threshold that we needed to add nutrients to Lake Windsor as well as to Lake Avalon in the month of July. Again, this only happens once it meets the threshold of the Secchi disc. AGFC stocks some hybrid striped bass, and make sure everyone realizes these are hybrids. These are not just your typical striped bass, which is a concern. Also, the high winds broke one of our sea anchors, so we're going to have to replace probably all of those after inspection. This is on the Loch Lomond Marina where we have our mooring, and so we're looking at a few $1,000s to go ahead and replace these. Also, the bumpers around the marina have to be replaced periodically, mainly because of pontoon boats tearing them up with the way they're tied. Power washing the Lake Avalon fishing dock. This is golf rounds. As you can see, we made through the month of July about 109,000. Certainly it's not as much as we had our 2012. Certainly was a peak year for us. It was the first year that we've had any increase in about a dozen years. We went back down a little bit in 2013 while still staying above 2012. In 2014, you can see we're even lower than 2011. So this is the lowest July that we've had in well over a decade. Other areas, just general maintenance on our golf courses. Continue to do the top dressing of our greens, the deep tying of ventilation, sod work in some of the areas. We are, as you know, we had a lot of winter kill, trouble transitioning out. We had to buy some sod to replace some of those areas that were just not going to heal on their own. This was our Scottsdale #1 fairway. Scottsdale suffered probably the most from the winter kill as well as the transition when we sprayed out the ryegrass that had been overseeded with. As you can see, there's a lot of dirt there. We did do some extra work that we generally are not required to do. We aerated the fairways, applied 3 fertilizer applications to try to kickstart the Bermuda. And as you can see, a lot of progress was made. But there was certainly, we got a lot of complaints. We generally don't get that many complaints coming out of the winter, but we did certainly get a lot of complaints out of Scottsdale this year. Of course, the storm damage also it was inflicted on our golf courses. This is something that we're trying here. Of course, dry sand is very important for all the different things that we do, top dressing, aerification. And so we have now put a retractable cover over the central maintenance sand bin to see if that would help us there. Done some work on dogwood cart path here. Some of our events, we had the All in the Family, the MGA WGC event. Also, the Razorback Celebrity event, and we had our 4th of July pool party. There's a few pictures of it. We always have a lot of attendance. We've quit doing any advertising of this because we can hardly handle this, the number of people that just always come. And we have those now. We've expanded them that we now do them at both of our pools, whereas for years we only done them in Kingsdale. Now, that's the end of my presentation. At this point, I would like to ask Don Schmutz, who is our EHS manager, to come up, and we talked a little bit about the issues that we were seeing as electrical hazards related to the docks and marinas. And Don has done a lot of work with this and also working with the city, and so he has prepared a presentation that he has shown the city council as well as wanted to show you guys now. So Don, if you would.
Thank you, Tommy. here, somewhere in the United States, you'll see headlines like this. Some of it's pretty close to home. Lake of the Ozarks. It was 2 years ago where 3 children were electrocuted up there. Two of those kids were from the same family, swimming at the same dock. Swimming woman likely electrocuted by dock wiring. Arkansas passed a bill in 2011, Bill 317, it's subtitled Jesse's Law, and that ensures the safety of boat docks and marinas by establishing some minimum qualifications. It also requires some signage. This just basically says that your marina and your docks have to be NFPA approved electrical wiring, and the bottom line to what that is just GFCI circuit protection. Some people think that circuit breakers protect people. They don't. It's GFCI that protects people. It also requires signage that warns of electrical shock hazards and also warns to swim at your own risk. I've included some pictures. This is just a GFCI circuit breaker. You can always tell. It'll have a test button on it. Just because you have a GFCI circuit breaker doesn't mean it works. They're kind of famous for failing. I read an audit of a boat marina here a while back, and 50% of them didn't work. So that's the annual inspection requirement. Just a sample of the signing that's required. You can have it all on one sign, or you can break it up and have 2 separate signs. I just threw some examples of some electrical hazards in here. Some of these were taken on our property, and some were just off the internet, but I wanted everybody to understand what we're talking about. It could start with your residential wiring and just poor grounding or sloppy wiring. I think we've all seen the bucket of snake extension cords. That's always a problem. Cords not properly secured. This could easily drop off, or somebody could drop it in the water. Here again, no GFCI. Damaged extension cords. Missing ground prongs. This was on our property. And then just plain sloppy wiring. There's a lot of home wiring out there, I'm sure, that people think they know what they're up to, but they end up with sort of a sloppy job. It really doesn't serve the purpose it's intended for. The next thing I did is I benchmarked our lakes with surrounding lakes, Beaver Lake, Grand Lake, Lake of the Ozarks, Hot Springs Village, and Lake Tenkiller. Some of the things that they're doing, annual inspections and initial inspections. They put stickers over in Grove. They put stickers on the docks after they inspect them. They have specific requirements for extension cords, so you don't have household extension cords being used around water. And then the GFCI electrical requirements, permitting, and signage, all were things that they were doing. Our recommendations have been initial and annual inspections, inspection stickers or placards on the docks, code requirements that align with NFPA electrical standards, signage requirements, and we believe it should also include residents of Pump Lake water for the purpose of irrigation. As Tommy said, I'm working closely with the city on this. We really feel it should be a joint effort, and we'll continue to surge forward with this. It's a very critical issue. Thank you.
Any questions? Don?
Yes, sir.
The requirement exist under the Arkansas statute is something that's in effect currently, and is there a recognized entity that has enforcement authority for that, or how does that work?
I think where you would get into an enforcement authority is if you had an issue on one of the legs. If you had an incident, I think that'd be one of the first things they'd look at is, are you compliant with the bill? I don't believe, to the best of my knowledge, that anybody goes around and inspects other than your local municipalities.
So it remain voluntary to start with, as far as signage and safety.
Yeah, that's one other thing we did, thank you, Ruth. We sent out a news release, Christy helped me, we're starting to educate the public a little bit about it, and we just basically, we'll take one step at a time and educate the public, and hopefully everybody will realize how serious it is and take some action on their own, yes.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you.
What really got Don to looking into this was that we've had some reports of people on our lakes that have been feeling electricity in the water. And so that's really what prompted him to get involved. And then after we looked at what enforcement we could provide, that's when we realized quickly that we really needed help from the city to do this. And so we have met with them on a number of occasions now, and we know that they also see that this is a concern. It is a safety issue for sure. There are already laws that cover much of this, but as Don mentioned, there's not really a jurisdiction that looks after these things other than generally a municipality, or in the case like you've got a core run lake or something like that. So I believe you'll be seeing more of that, but our first step was just to start public education.
Anything else? Anything else with the general manager?
Nothing from me.
Okay. There's just a couple of things I want to point out in the activity report. We're tracking new property owners. There were 78 new property owners in Bella Vista during the month of July. I also thought it was interesting that one of the amenities that we don't hear a whole lot about that seems to be a very attractive amenity based on usage is the gun range. There were 408 trap and skeet shooters and 563 members and guests who visited the rifle range. 1,000 people were out at that facility. That's a fairly significant facility. The only other thing I want to point out is, again, we track new homes with building permits, and in the month of July we had 7. So for the year we're at 27. Last year, I think for the entire 12 months we had 28. So we seem to be at least tracking in a positive note in that regard.
Charlie, I just had one other observation too. On page 1 of the activity report, we talk about information distributions and the number of people that are subscribed to Foresight, the Golf Update, Lakes, Recreation, etc. And my perception is that oftentimes our members don't realize all the opportunities that are available to them. And when I look at the number of subscribers, I go, wow, that's like 5% of our membership. And I'm wondering what we do, if anything, to try and gather more emails and basically put every member on one of these lists and effectively force them to opt out. So we send them these emails, and if they don't want them, they can unsubscribe.
At this point, we did have a lot of people that were subscribed to a number of different emails, whether it be lakes, whether it be golf. And that's the only way that we were collecting and continue to collect email addresses. When we started the general update, we combined all of those lists into one list, and then we told everyone that they will get it unless they opt out. And there were quite a few people that opted out. They just didn't want that much information. But as far as an ongoing, we believe that we need to put some type of program in place that we do collect, but I believe for your initial, you're going to have some incentives out there. And so that's what we think, that we're going to have to put something together to get these email addresses from our people. On the other hand, not only do people change carriers and things like that, we also have a change of anywhere between 2,000 and 5,000 members a year. So it's never going to be a perfect process, but we certainly have room, and we hope with our new software we'll even have more ability to try to get those things. If you recall going through the process with Cogsdale, which was so archaic and difficult, you already have someone sitting there for 45 minutes to an hour. We think with the new system, which hopefully we can get things done in maybe 15-20% of that time, people would be more willing to be there for just a little bit longer to do these type of things. So that's what our hope is, to collect more.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is response to previous open forum comments. There was a mention at last month's open forum about septic lots. I just want to clarify that the POA has no authority to replat lots. That's not within our jurisdiction. We have no ability to combine, adjust. That's just not something that the Property Owners Association has any jurisdiction over. There also were a couple comments about the timing of the assessment increase vote, and I just want to make just this statement. Assessments at the current level will simply not support the necessary maintenance and upgrade of amenities and associated increased operating costs resulting from years of inflation. This board clearly recognizes its obligation and responsibility to maintain and improve the association's recreation amenities as outlined in the governing documents. In order to fulfill this obligation, it's important for the board to ensure the financial viability of the association, and we take this responsibility very seriously. Members have voted to increase assessments a total of only 4 times over the past 49 years. The latest being in 2001, 13 years ago, which time a 2-tier assessment structure was implemented. Members with an improved lot, a lot with a water meter, pay $24 a month, and members with unapproved lots pay $16 a month. Bella Vista Village's assessment has no inflationary provision, and our assessment cannot be increased independently by the board. Increases to assessments must be accomplished by an affirmative vote of the members. The board has structured an assessment plan which we believe will put the association on the right financial path to maintain our amenities, begin to address inflation concerns, and market to new property owners, all of which benefits each of us as current property owners. With a minimal increase in monthly assessments, all of us can continue to enjoy the recreation amenities which Bella Vista Village offers now and into the future. The proposed increase of $6 per month for improved lots and $2 per month for unapproved lots is very reasonable after no assessment increases for 13 years. Any other response to open forum comments last month? Okay. We will open up the floor for open forum this evening. Anyone who would like to address the board, if you please approach a microphone and provide us with your name and address. Okay. New business, or old business, I'm sorry, Ruth. Bella Vista signage.
Signage report tonight's very brief. We reviewed several designs. We've made some revisions and returned them to the design companies to see if they could possibly match the revisions we made. We're also contacting other local companies to see what they might come up with.
Ruth, I have not seen it myself, but I did get an email from Cooper that they have bush hogged that area, and they would like us to evaluate it and see if there's anything else that needs to be done at the north.
Take care of that. Thank you.
Okay.
Ruth, just a quick follow-up question. Do we have any sense of order of magnitude of the costs on these things? Are we looking at, $10,000 a piece or $100,000 a piece, or kind of where does it appear to be coming out?
We don't have any particular price in mind. We're looking at design first. We had a couple ideas, and it came out to be, for both signs together, our share would be less than $20,000. But not knowing what we're coming up with for sure, it's going to be somewhere in the 20 to 40s, somewhere in that ballpark.
Any other questions, Mike?
Do you have any idea when we'll be getting information back on this? I mean, we get a lot of, calls and stuff regarding, when are we going to get our signs up?
Appreciate that. We've looked at it, as I said, we've had some designs we thought we liked, we revised them to what we really wanted, and sent them back to design, and we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks to kind of bring things up to date. Our goal is to have it by the end of the year and in the ground by the first part of next year, so that's our goal.
Next item under old business is the assessment plan. Built into the 2014 budget was an expense for an election, annual election, which we had in the spring of this year, election of board of directors along with the assessment plan that was defeated by the membership. For the current assessment plan, there's costs associated with that for mailing and printing of around $22,000. There is a general manager's contingency fund that was included as part of the 2014 budget that has a balance of about $126,000. That has traditionally been utilized for unanticipated capital projects. But there is available money. We're more than halfway through the year, and it may be something that the board would consider to utilize that general manager's contingency fund for the expenses of this particular assessment. So I'd entertain a motion that take place.
I'll make a motion that we allocate or earmark approximately $22,000 from the general manager's contingency fund to cover the costs of the August 2014 assessment election.
Second. Any discussion? Mike?
I'd just like to clarify that there were 3 board members who voted against having the election and spending the money to conduct an election. Mr. Barfield, who I have his proxy, myself, and another board member. Inasmuch as the board majority outvoted us on that issue, and we are going to have to spend the money, I would endorse using it out of the general manager's contingency fund as opposed to taking it from some other budget area or from reserves. So I just wanted to clarify that you'll get my positive vote, but it's under those conditions.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote.
The motion is for the board to allocate $22,000 from the general manager's contingency fund to pay for the expenses associated with the August assessment election. All in favor? Any opposed?
Motion carries. The first item under new business is the Recreation Joint Advisory Committee regarding Branchwood. The committee, the Recreation Joint Advisory Committee met on August 11th and provided a recommendation to the board regarding their thoughts concerning the next steps concerning the Branchwood golf course land. The recommendation is summarized on the last page, which includes, and I'll go through this, very quickly. Hire expert recreational amenities / facilities design group to research and suggest an overview plan for repurposing of the green space former golf course into a comprehensive recreation outdoor park. Include membership and specifically members who live in the Branchwood community in the above process. Maintenance of lawn area will be ongoing until land is repurposed. Fill in the water ruts as soon as we can, and communicate clearly the outcome of the plan with a realistic timetable for future changes, repurposing projects. So those are the 4 recommendations that are included. What we need to do is we need to have the board accept the recommendations. That's not an endorsement, it's merely a process to ensure that the recommendation then becomes the responsibility of the board to follow up on. So I would entertain a motion to have the Recreation Joint Advisory Committee's recommendation, white paper, accepted by the board.
Make a motion.
Second? Any discussion? Call for a vote.
Motion is for the board to accept the Joint Advisory Committee's recommendations for consideration by the board. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries.
So now that we have the recommendation in front of us, I'd like to get a sense as to how the board would go about involving the membership in the Branchwood community, because I think that's important. So anyone have any thoughts regarding that? Because I think in my mind, that's sort of the first step in the process in terms of what we end up sort of going through.
Ask Joe a question.
Yes.
Joe, you were on the committee when this was formulated. Can you brief us on it?
Well, the immediate community have been involved. They've attended several meetings, and that is a representation of some of the people that live on the, directly on the lots connected to the golf course. So they have been privy to all our discussions. The thought would be that if the recommendations of getting an expert to come in and look and make recommendations, that those folks would be prime examples of people that we would invite to the table to hear those discussions. Much like what we did with the trail meeting, the open forum, but with a concerted effort to involve those people, to invite those. So that's kind of the thought around it. It was the opinion that the Joint Advisory Committee, since the Golf Committee had basically decided that it was no longer something that they felt was under their responsibility or their domain, that we really needed recreation specialists to look at it from a green space. And then when the possibilities were presented, to involve the community to, give their feedback.
John?
John, were there any things that the people that lived in that area wanted in that facility?
From my recollection, people really just wanted the area to be maintained. Now, certainly there were people that would prefer it to remain a golf space, and that was voiced. But as discussions evolved, they seemed, again, I'm recalling the last meeting, they seemed to fully understand that the Joint Committee and the board was very aware that we needed to do something, and they were appreciative that we were trying to move forward. And then certainly the recommendation, could the area at least be maintained minimally and mowed? And, because of Tommy following up with his crew, that has been done. I think that too has been witnessed by those property owners and appreciated. But no, there was no one or two even specific recommendations or even ideas that came forth that I recall in any of the meetings.
I know.
Walking was discussed. That was mentioned many times, that there are people that, even though effectively that area is closed, there are still people doing that.
I know in the Green Play report, there's a list of 5 or 6 items that they recommended, and were they discussed at all of the meetings? No pros or cons, or?
No, not to that detail.
Mike?
Well, this has been an issue since 2011. We had a problem with the pump originally, and Of course, this whole problem was exacerbated by the flooding last year. Ultimately, this board, or maybe the next board, I don't know, the way we're progressing. But anyway, the board of directors is going to have to make a decision as which way to go. We had Green Play come in. He came up with some recommendations. I think it's up to the local community. We have people here with expertise. And as soon as the board comes up with a decision as to which way we're going to go, restore it as a golf course, make it walking trails, or whatever we're going to do, then we should hire a professional organization to come in and make that happen. But ultimately, we're going to have to make the decision as what we're going to do with it. And people out there voted for us to make those kind of decisions. So I think we need to get on with it and pretty soon make a decision what we're going to do with it.
And I would just add that their recommendation was towards a green space. And you can read the way it's outlined that they're not recommending just golf, that they are looking at it as a broader, and hence the need for a specialist to come in and look at it.
In the meantime, if it takes a motion, I would offer a motion that we maintain the area to keep it maintained in a good condition so that we're not adversely affecting property values of people who live in that area. So if you want a motion for that, I'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing activity.
We already have that initiated as far as mowing and such as that. The pond is the real problem there, and that's why I reported a couple of months ago that after a test, which we've known that pond has leaked. My understanding is since it was built, that us trying to keep the water up so we can try to keep as much of the vegetation down. We've treated it. It's going to cost us about $3,000 a month in electricity to keep the pond full. Even that was not going to be enough to, we sprayed herbicides on the pond. So the pond's going to be an issue, and I think there's going to have to be some kind of decision made. I don't believe that we can afford to spend that kind of money to keep the pond looking nice without a golf course. And unfortunately, that decision has not been made yet. I don't envision that a pond should be a part of any future for that property. But I'm hesitant to say to go ahead and let us fill it in until you decide for sure that's not going to be a golf course.
I guess my understanding is we're looking at two issues. Whether to hire an outside person to come in and facilitate to come up with ideas as to what to do with it, or to come up with ideas first and then have somebody come in and help us do it. So are those the two issues we're really looking at?
That's exactly what I think. Yeah. I mean, my sense is that if there's input from the Joint Advisory Committee, there's input from Green Play, and we've got input from several interested members regarding what their recommendations are. What I would like to do is formulate an outline of what I think the board might recommend in terms of repurposing that, and then have the board decide that's the direction we want to go. And then at that point, we can then solicit input from the members, along with identifying, who it is that can help us with, implementing that final decision. Does anyone have any issue with that, Mike?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say is, why don't we pick 3 or 4 recommendations from the Joint Advisory Committee and Green Play, get some kind of an idea of what costs are going to be for each one of those. That'll help us make a better decision, I think. I mean, we're just shooting in the dark without having any idea what it's going to cost to do this, and I think we're just beating our heads against the wall.
John?
in my mind, the first decision is we have to say, we're going to close it as a golf course. That's right. And I'm willing to make a motion right now to say that I would move that we close Branchwood as a golf course and then start developing a plan to repurpose it as something else.
You wanna- okay. Are you okay with that as a
Can we
motion?
discuss?
Yeah, exactly. Is that an appropriate motion?
Motion to decide not to use Branchwood as a golf course anymore?
Yes.
My motion was to close it as a golf course and then and after the decisions are made to close it, then we'll develop a plan for repurposing.
Yeah, I believe that's a
Okay,
proper
and
motion.
second by Mr. Brooks. Ruth?
My question is, what happens if we decide it's going to be disc golf? What happens if it's,
Not a golf course, it's a
Okay.
different function.
so if you use, okay.
Okay.
And disc golf, I think that's a valid point, Ruth. Disc golf would be something that was brought up in the Greenplay study and has been brought up just in general conversations, but it was always as a part of a greater space, not a one-off.
And foot golf is the same new thing coming up that would be much like disc golf, so. But golf as a golf course, I understand.
Traditional.
Yeah.
We're talking about whether it would remain or not as a traditional golf course. Okay, everyone understand that? Okay. Any other?
I'd just make a comment. While I would probably agree with John's motion, I am a little bit hesitant because I think we're willing to close the golf course because we're looking at $500,000, roughly, to reopen it as a golf course. And yet, to Mike's point, we really don't have a clue what it might cost to repurpose it for disc golf or picnic shelters or fishing ponds or hiking trails or any one of 7 other alternatives. And so I'm a little bit hesitant to say it shouldn't be a golf course because it's too expensive to repair when we really don't know what it's going to cost us to do anything else with it. I'm not saying I'm against it, I just would like a little more substance to the discussion.
We did get preliminary estimates on walking, hiking, biking trails. And those, again, can run a gamut from, depending on how much footage, linear footage you do, from in the $75,000 range to $250,000. But that would be, low end to high end, and it depends on what you want to do. So there has been work done on that. A lot of those other things are, in my opinion, minimal costs. Disc golf would be an example. The equipment for that is metal equipment, very reasonably cost. Now, if you want to go more elaborate and do, something like a 9-hole miniature golf or, an extensive playground equipment, then you're talking more money, and Tommy certainly would know more about that.
I would just like to make the comment, I don't believe that cost to repair should be the only thing that we're looking at. We also need to look at demand. Anytime that you have any issue like this, you should also reevaluate your whole premise. And with us being 53% down in golf rounds over the last little over a decade, I think that we should evaluate it on more than just cost to replace.
I don't believe demand as much as inventory that we already have in golf holes that can be utilized with some simple USGA alternatives as far as developing short tees on some of our existing golf courses. We have the ability, because we have the inventory, that we can develop short courses for some of these people that want to have their kids learn to play golf, and for some of our members that can't hit the ball 150 yards anymore. That program's been out there for 2 years. It's very successfully run in other operations, and at very little cost. It's a matter of a couple of markers at different points in the golf course that inform the person your average tee shot's 150 yards, you tee it here, and then right off that golf court path, you mow down an area. You don't even have to go out and put tee markers down. And that's been very successfully used. So while Brad, I think your concern's valid, my answer would be, we have the inventory. It's a matter of adjusting its use. And quite frankly, to have a golf course where we're charging $2 and the only people that are really playing it are only there on a every once in a while basis, I think we're not doing a service to the other golfers in our community. So
Mike?
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be negative here, and we will probably end up with an ultimate decision that says we're not going to maintain Branchwood as a golf course. But we don't have all the stuff out on the table. We haven't announced to anybody that we're going to vote on that as an issue tonight. And I'm sure there would be numerous people to attend if they knew we were going to vote on it tonight. I still think we need to have options on the table with costs, estimated costs, and the rationale for why we're not going to continue it as a golf course if that's the ultimate outcome. So I'm sorry, but I won't vote to make a decision to close it as a golf course tonight.
I don't personally see how this is going to alter what we're going to do there by voting to say we're not going to do that. You can put that on the back burner, look at other options, then come up with, in the end, that these are where this is the direction we're going, and because of this direction, we're not going to have it as a golf course.
But we're not ready to make that decision at this point.
But I don't see that we need to say that it's not going to be a golf course in order to make those decisions. I think we can go ahead and make those decisions, gather all our information, in the back of our minds. Right now, we don't think there's going to be a golf course as it is, but I don't think the decision has to be made tonight on that in order to move forward.
well, I don't like the idea of spending $3,000 a month to keep a pond full, or to maintain it, or to do the things we need to do to keep it looking pretty. If, even if it's going to be a golf course, maybe we shouldn't have the pond there. So, for us to continue to spend money on a sinkhole,
That's
to me,
that's not the motion,
well,
sir.
I understand. I'm justifying why I'm voting for the motion. For me, to continue to spend money is like throwing it down a hole. And I think we need action. I said this before 3 months ago. I think we need to act on it.
The problem, there's approximately 40 acres there. And the rec and the golf committee had this for a year and came up with a recommendation that is not really materially different than Green Bay's recommendation from 2 years ago. And we need to move forward, and the reason I suggested we just make the decision to close it is until we make a decision to close it or do something, make it a golf, and I don't care if we make it a golf course or we make it a beautiful park. We need to do something with it, and until we decide this is what we're going to do, we're going to sit here and we're going to retread over and over and over against the same ground, always afraid that we're going to offend somebody who likes to play golf there, or offend somebody that we're not doing something. And it's 40 acres of land. The cost to refurbish it as a golf course, if it's $500,000, we're not going to refurbish it as some other kind of a park for a lot less than that. The difference, it's 40 acres of landscaping. It's the cost of the cost. It's like building a house. There's a cost per square foot, but it's not going to require the maintenance as a park. It probably will get us, if we do it right, some facilities that our ongoing needs are more important. And as Tommy said, when we decide what we're going to do with it, we're going to look at what things we're not serving our membership with. And this is an opportunity for us to get something there that services our membership. I was in Portland, Oregon last 2 weeks ago, and I walked through downtown in those little splash parks like they have in downtown Bentonville. They have 11 of them in downtown Portland, You couldn't stand in line to get in one. You couldn't have got your feet wet there if you wanted to. And they have 11 of those things, and we have none. And so obviously, my general opinion is that's a market that's out there that we're not serving. And there's probably, I don't know the recreation market that well, there's probably some other things that we're not serving that we could use this land to do.
Okay.
One last comment.
One comment, and then
That's
we're going
it?
to have to.
Okay. Just want to clarify that voting tonight to not use Branchwood as a golf course does not necessarily say that you're going to stop putting water into the pond.
Right.
It's not in the motion.
Okay. Call for vote.
So you want to vote on this motion, or you want to table it, or?
Well,
Motion's still there?
motion's still there. I mean, if someone wants to table it, that's their prerogative.
Okay.
That's,
So the motion is to close Branchwood as a golf course and to begin discussions, the board beginning discussions to use it as another purpose. All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion fails.
Can I make another motion? Sure. I'd like to make the motion that we moved post haste with the idea of repurposing Branchwood and move on it immediately. Put the plan in place and move on it.
Are you recommending that we hire somebody to give us a plan?
I think we need to put the plan in place to decide what we're going to do, go from there.
Would you consider a group made up of some board members and individuals in the Branchwood community and possibly someone from the Recreation Committee?
Certainly would.
Is that something you would like to include in your motion?
I would like to include that in my motion, Charlie.
Okay. You have a second? Second. Okay. Discussion?
I just want to make sure that Ruth's motion is not including the hiring of an outside consultant, but instead the study is going to be done strictly with internal resources and volunteer labor.
Well, is that what's being recommended now and initially, and forthcoming an expert might be called for?
That's exactly what I'm recommending.
Okay.
My
Fair.
understanding is, I mean, I don't envision that volunteers are going to get, a big sheet of paper and say, this is what we want to build, and give it to Tommy and his group to go build it. At some point in time, we're going to need somebody who knows what they're doing with earth moving and that sort of thing to actually construct this. So at some point in time, we will need professional expertise, but in terms of identifying what we want the thing to generally contain, to me, that's a volunteer effort of residents and semi-knowledgeable recreation people.
Can someone restate the motion for me? I'm not sure I understand exactly what it is.
Charlie, do you have that down?
No. And that shouldn't be me, too.
I make the motion, watch this carefully. I make the motion that we move ahead with the plans to repurpose Branchwood by gathering a group together of some board members, some, at least one or two Recreation Committee members and local people from the Branchwood area to make plans to decide what they'd like to move forward on at this time.
I would like to suggest not just Branchwood residents, but other POA members that might have input. There are a lot of people that don't live in Branchwood that use it, so.
Or expertise in the area. I agree, Mike.
Okay.
Can you add that, sir?
Can we have a second? Okay. Any further discussion?
Does that motion take the making it a golf course again out of the question, or is that still part of the,
Doesn't say either way.
okay, so it's still a possibility?
Okay. Any other discussion? Call for a vote.
So the motion is to make plans to repurpose Branchwood by forming a group to include board members and other members of the village to make plans for repurposing Branchwood. All in favor? Any opposed? 1 abstention.
What I will do is circulate an email, and we'll ask that we get something out to the membership, soliciting some interest on the part of the membership. Do that would be good. All right. The 2009 water bond refinance.
Okay, at the work session last week, we had an underwriter here to go with us, the Cruz and Associates representative here to go over the 2009 water bond. We have identified the opportunity now that it's time to go ahead and refinance this. There it is. We have, going forward with just a lower interest rate and keeping our same payments, which is what we believe is the right thing to do because we're not cash strapped at this point in the water division. We could save approximately 22 or 24 months of the current bond term, and that would save us about $1.1 million in interest. And as Wayne has put together just a real quick comparison, the debt service would move from $9.8 million to $8.7. That's where the $1,078,000. Our current interest rate is averaging 4.69. The proposed would be 2.84. So we would save about 1.85% over the remainder of the life of this bond. We did get an update on this. At this late date, it would probably be early September before we could actually get the interest rate locked in if we approve it tonight. But we still should have time to satisfy the 90-day call requirement. So it is our recommendation that we move forward on this as soon as possible so we can lock this savings in. I know that I'm sure that all of you that watches the different news channels, that there's speculation about when the rates are going to start going up. I believe we need to go ahead and get this done.
I recommend that motion for refinancing the 2009 water bond be accepted.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? Brad?
Just a quick point of clarification, and I apologize for being ignorant, but are we currently able to prepay on the water bond?
Yes, that was part of it as far as the refinancing.
And so if we do this refinancing, we still retain the right to prepay? Because as you mentioned, we're not exactly cash strapped in the water department, and I wonder about pushing a little more money against that debt at some point in time. Not making any sort of recommendation now, but I want to make sure we didn't lose that opportunity in the future.
We wanted to keep that open because certainly that would be a very good option for us if the AC pipe test comes back more favorable than what we had anticipated in the past.
Any other discussion? Call for a vote.
The motion is to refinance the 2009 water bond. All in favor? Any opposed?
Next item on the agenda is the Little Sugar Creek Water Trail issue. Is that something? I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. The reason that's on the agenda is at the working session, there's been a group in the village that include individuals from the Property Owners Association, Dave Barfield from the POA board, and representatives of the city. And what we're looking at is using Sugar Creek as an opportunity for a water trail. There's a kind of an inconsistent use of that resource, and what we're looking at is with some assistance from an individual at the University of Arkansas who's a recreation expert who also is interested in utilizing natural resources in the state, to come up with a plan similar to what they're doing with the trail plan, the walking trail plan for the city. And so that's something that is an ongoing activity. There's been a sort of conceptual idea of how that would work. We obviously have issues with the fact that this water trail will transgress a couple of our golf courses, so we can work out sort of how that whole process works. But that's something that is in the works and is going to be something that you'll be hearing about going forward. Okay. Next item on the agenda is overseeding. Let me find. The agronomist from the United States Golf Association made his visit to Bella Vista on August 13th. And there was some discussion about a number of things: water conservation, turf health, and overseeding. And that's one of the issues that was part of the recommendation that was made by the USGA representative. It was discussed at the golf committee meeting later on that afternoon of August 13th. And the golf committee, based on the observation that was made on the village golf courses and the recommendation and discussion with the USGA representative to consider looking at other options for the golf courses besides overseeding.
I wanted to talk a little bit about overseeding. Certainly overseeding has been debated in Bella Vista for many, many years. I know that it was an old subject when I got here 13 years ago, and so it has been debated a lot. In 2007, the board acted on a golf JEC similar to what Charlie just read from the last meeting, to eliminate overseeding due to the cost as well as for the concern of the conditions of the fairways. This decision was reversed after member complaints before implementation was ever carried out. So we never did actually try that. What we did is worked on a compromise that we would put our courses into a rotation. And so we would have, of our 6 courses, 4 would be overseeded, 2 would not be overseeded on an annual basis. Well, that lasted, we're trying to remember, but we think a couple of years. And essentially, the rotation was abandoned because the Highlands Golf Course and the Country Club fairways were in such bad shape. And we've determined over the years that because of the narrowness of Highlands and the shade that is on the golf course, that just having the Bermuda fairways is a difficult enough process as it is without adding the competition of the ryegrass on there. So we essentially took it out. Also, the Country Club was having some issues, and we also took it out of the rotation. Just a little bit about overseeding. The advertised benefits that have been out there and talked about for many years is certainly the green color during the spring of the year before the Bermuda comes out of dormancy, allows carts off path during the winter, better playing surface during the February and March time frame, and it protects dormant Bermuda during the winter time for cart traffic, and as well as from the cold temperatures. Certainly from the issues that I've seen in my time here, as the proponents of overseeding seems to be, in my perception, the biggest issue is whether or not they can get their carts off path during the wintertime. I will say that, and we have looked at the records over the years, that we have to restrict the cart path many times during the year, and probably even more during the summer and the winter and the spring, because of the wet conditions out there after rains or whatever. But also, we believe that carts could be allowed off path during the wintertime, with the exception of those normal wet periods, if we had a healthy stand of Bermuda established before we go into the winter months. Now, we also believe that because of the amount of play that we experience during the winter months, that we still need to control or manage the traffic. And we would do that through the use of signage, rope, and restricting cart paths for a short period of time throughout the winter. The other part that we have that many courses don't have is that we have multiple courses that we can kind of alternate around so that people still get the ability to play all the different courses during those winter months. And we believe that we can work this out in a way that would not be a real hardship even to our golfers who have trouble getting around. So, which is the ones I tend to hear, I believe, the most of, is that are worried about the physical impairments that allows them to, or prevents them from golfing as much when the carts are restricted to path. We see also that this last year, certainly the overseeded did not help or did not protect our Bermuda fairways during this cold winter. And we also see that our Bermuda areas in the roughs and the approach areas, which were not overseeded, are in a better condition now than our transitioning fairways. And I thought this was interesting, I know that not many of you were here, but as the overseeding was discussed with the USGA representative, his question was, which I've never really had it put to us that way, what type of fairway do you say you have? Well, all of us said, okay, well, it's Bermuda. Okay, well, he didn't exactly say it in these words, but I think the question we need to ask ourselves is, if Bermuda is our fairways, and that's what we want, why would we not keep our conditions to be best suited for Bermuda all throughout the year, instead of adding the competition that we do during overseeding? Just a few other things as far as from an agronomic standpoint. Winter overseeding is the same thing as we're trying to grow two different grasses in the same place that both have different life cycles as well as different management techniques. When the practices are geared in favor of one, certainly during the early spring when we're trying to get the rye to be good, then it's going to be its strongest right as the Bermuda is trying to come out. And so we're gearing that towards the rye at that point, and that is going to compromise the ability of the Bermuda. With the establishment of an overseeded cover, significant stress is then placed on our Bermuda base. Here's just the cost of our overseeding. The material cost for our 2014, which I think has been the same for probably 2012, 2013, and 2014, we're using about 200 pounds per acre, is about $17,000. The labor for us to plant it, the fertilizer that's required, the additional mowing that we do in it before the Bermuda comes out of dormancy, and as well as the herbicide application is about $4,100. So the total cost per course is close to $1,000, or about $84,000 for all 4 of the courses. The best practice, if we were really trying to go with the overseeding that the industry considers as the best practice, would be about 400 pounds per acre. We were at one point 400 pounds per acre, but as costs have been continually under pressure for us to reduce, we have reduced our amount of seed out there. If we were to go to the best practice, the material cost would be about $28,000, very little change in labor, except for the application of fertilizer. Then we would be at about $33,000 or about $131,000 for a year. We have been collecting data, mainly in photographic form, about the differences between our overseeded and non-overseeded fairways since 2012. And I've been showing these pictures for the last 3 years now, of showing this is what it looked like comparing these two areas. And you can see fairly easily what the line there is. This was in 2013. I've got quite a few pictures of 2014. Of course, you can still see a distinct difference, although there's some other areas that are certainly much more distinctive. This is our non-overseeded approach. Here's our overseeded fairway. And actually, you will see a little bit of green here, and we'll talk about that in just a second. Here, and this is 419 Bermuda. Mostly what we have in our fairways is common Bermuda. And so you can see that the 419 is better equipped than the common Bermuda as coming out of this transition, and also competing with the ryegrass. We certainly don't have a lot of 419 out there, and it will certainly cost us a lot to switch over to 419. This is just a close-up. As you can see, there's some pretty bad areas out there as we were transitioning out. I mentioned earlier that there were areas that are rough, actually looked better than our fairways. This is a perfect example of this. And then you can, of course, you can also see the 419 area over here. Another picture is showing the transitional areas. Another one, don't want to beat a dead horse, but and then you've already seen this picture here. Just to wrap it up, Charlie's already mentioned this. The JAC and the staff also recommend that we discontinue overseeding, and that we start by doing that at the same time we use traffic control to still protect our dormant Bermuda. We are up against the wall right now. You have to order the seed. We have the pre-emergents that are coming down. We really have to have a decision right now if you want us to stop overseeding. Our plan, our budget is for us to begin overseeding, and that we would be ordering the seed right away. If you decide that you want to take that recommendation, then we would do differently with our pre-emergent, and we, of course, would not order the seed for the 2014 year. But we do need a decision if you do want to quit overseeding tonight.
The main issue that the golf committee and people have noticed in the last several years with overseeding or not overseeding has been carts on path and also color. Keith, I think he's still here.
Yeah. Yes.
Can you address those for the general public, that those can be addressed so that it would not be an issue?
I think I comment on that for everybody. If not,
That ain't gonna work.
yes, overseeding. Okay, let's start out here. Traffic. I think the group here in Bella Vista has been told in the past that if you don't overseed or you're dormant Bermuda, you cannot get carts on it. I don't personally agree with that. I think it can be moved around. It can be managed, as we talked about, with rope and things like that. But one of the other things we can do here, going back to the point of multiple golf courses and working with Andy in his area, is we can schedule golf courses to be closed to traffic throughout the winter months. It will be scheduled on paper. The group play then will be scheduled to play on a different golf course during those times. So that's how we can minimize traffic on dormant Bermuda. So that kind of answers that. From From a color standpoint, there are options out there which we're exploring. People spray paint or pigment to give it color. As a matter of fact, there is some research, I just got it from the USGA this week after our visit, of some ways to spray those earlier and later that extends the length and the growth of the Bermuda, which would make it stronger and hold up through the winter months. So the other thing, there's not many golf courses, and it's not a reason right here not to do it or do it. There's not many people doing it anymore. I haven't done it on the golf courses I've been on since '99. A lot of people drive carts off the path everywhere else. There will be some areas that will get thin, but I'm confident that there's no way that it would look like it does now when we came out of transition, especially in Scottsdale. Now, I'm going to go ahead and to tell you, Scottsdale is the golf course we have that has the most common out of all of them. Some of the other golf courses that did transition better because there was 419. But 419 and transition of any kind of grass, one or the other, is dependent on a lot of things that we don't have control of. So you're always going to have some kind of issue in a transition, in my opinion.
Thank you.
So the sum of your comments, as I understand, is that with some traffic control, even the non-overseeded courses would have access in the winter for carts.
Yes, we would rotate, give some golf courses a week off, and maybe in January, maybe a week off in February. We haven't finalized that plan, but that is the plan. And yes, you will not be restricted to golf cart paths just because it's not overseeded.
But as we talked about earlier, we already restrict carts to path a lot of times during these same months just because of the wet conditions. So it's probably a perception that there would be a lot less than what there usually is anyway.
Charlie, our golf product should be at its best when we have visitors and players that are playing the most. That was not the case this year.
That's right.
It's absolutely embarrassing for any of us that,
Yeah, we all got those emails.
cheerlead
from folks that
for
came
our
from
golf
out of town.
courses.
Yeah.
Anything we can do to improve that, I think, is a no-brainer. And I think the golfers in our community should embrace any method we can use to help our turf grass keep its strength for playability when we are at our peak. The only question I'd ask is, could we take some of the savings and use a better sand mix for overseeding instead of those pebbles we put on the greens?
Joe, you had a comment? No? Okay.
Motion.
Make a motion.
I make a motion that we forbid or do not overseed in 2014 for the 15 season.
Second.
Okay, discussion, Mike?
As long as it's clear that we will make every effort to support carts off path to the extent that we can, then I support the motion.
Okay. Any other comment? Call for a vote.
Motion is to not overseed in 2014 for the 2015 season. All in favor? It's unanimous.
I'd recommend that Keith get into the webpage or and some information to help support this so people can know right away that this is coming and what we're going to do to help it.
Tomorrow morning. All right. Moving on, Mike, rules and regs.
We have two proposed policies. First one is member conduct, and it's policy 2.06. Basically, it says let's follow the golden rule and treat people like you want to be treated. There are some restrictions and penalties if people don't follow this policy, where you have conduct that's really unbecoming, where you're threatening or abusive to people. There is a penalty within the existing bylaws that says you can be penalized up to 30 days restricted from use of the amenities. This is a policy that was brought forward from other POA type organizations, which I think is in general very good. It's more definitive than what we've had in the past. So I'd like this for first reading approval.
Okay. Second. Any discussion? John?
I appreciate the position, you know, that there seem to be a lot of people that have forgotten how to be polite in public. But then I also don't think it's the POA's place to legislate morality. I mean, we're working on making a rule that is probably unenforceable at best. I mean, we currently have standards, state laws, city laws, county laws about behavior. You know, people get outside of those standards, we can certainly call the police. I mean, I just don't think that that's our place in the world. You know, secondly, a lot of membership thinks we have way too many rules. I don't know why we would want to add another one that would be difficult to enforce.
First of all, it's not an addition, it's already an existing policy. I mean, it's already an existing. If you look at Article 8, Section 3C is defined in this, we already have provisions for penalties for misconduct.
Yeah, but then we have to enforce it. We have to have somebody to go out and, I understand. I know the enforcement procedure.
So what are you saying?
I don't think
want to have this policy?
I don't think it's our point to tell people how to act.
You want to rescind the other policy?
All right. Any other comment? Doug?
Propose that policy 2.06 regarding member conduct be submitted for a first reading. All in favor? Any opposed?
The second policy is investment policy 7.04. It's a little more lengthy, and for fear of really messing up the intent of this, I'd really like to ask Brad to give us a really brief synopsis of what the intent is here, since he helped draft this.
Okay, I'll try to be brief and still educational. Much like the member conduct policy, we already have an existing investment policy. However, I think this board has agreed that the existing investment policy is entirely too restrictive in terms of what the management of the POA can do with excess cash reserves. And as a result, the membership is suffering from loss of purchasing power in our cash. As we hold it, we make virtually no interest or any sort of capital appreciation on our cash. And inflation goes up every year, so at the end of every year, we literally have less purchasing power than we did at the beginning of the year. As a result, Dave Barfield and I co-authored this draft of an investment policy that effectively simply tries to broaden or open the fences a little bit, certainly not putting our cash at significant risk, but at least at some level of risk so that we can earn some level of reasonable return on our cash reserves.
I'd like to submit this for first reading approval.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Any comments? The only comments I have, and I'm admittedly a bit delinquent, is there's a couple of word changes that I would make kind of here and there, which, since this is a first reading, I would include that in comments that I would submit through the Rules and Regs Committee. But other than that, the concept, I think, is something that has some value for us. Any other comments?
Propose that policy 7.04 investment policy be considered for a first reading by the board. All in favor? Any opposed?
Anything else? Mike? The Communications Committee met on August 4th. We talked about, again, a a change in the description of the committee to marketing and communications. That would entail a bylaw change. That's something that the Rules and Regs committee is looking at. We've reviewed a number of things regarding the existing marketing programs with the idea that as we move into 2015, there may be some changes that we would look at. We also have had some assistance from an outside group that's interested in helping us to design some focused marketing, but that's basically all we've basically looked at. We're recommending changing the Village Voice publication to bi-monthly from quarterly, but also discontinuing Insights, and so that there would be a bi-monthly communication with the membership through the Village Voice, but there wouldn't be the regular communication, with the idea that we would use the possibly an insert in the water bill if there's something that needs to be communicated. So that's something that we'll look through that. So that's basically the report from communications. Any joint advisory committee reports?
Golf committee met last week, and it's already been reported that Ty McClellan, the USGA turf specialist, was here. He visited. Several board members were there, golfers, and all the JAC was there. Looked at the fairway greens, discussed problem areas, overseeding, winter management, not overseeding. Golf rounds were above average or above budget this month. The country club pump station is up and running, which was good news. And the country club in Scottsdale accomplishments for 2011 through 2014 were reported, but this month they added Highlands, and it's well worth looking at on the webpage and the minutes of the JAC meeting to see just how much has been done at the various courses over the last 3 years by volunteers and maintenance people.
Okay. The Recreation Committee met on August 11th at the Metfield Pavilion and toured the Metfield Park area, looked at the pickleball courts and a number of things in that area. There was some discussion about a proposed archery range, and I think Vern Olofsson is looking at where that might fit in terms of the overall location and that kind of thing. There also was a compliment to the POA staff for replacing the Metfield Park activity sign with one that's consistent with the rest of the signage that we have in the village, the gray signs with the black lettering. And that's and then they also prepared the final white paper for the recreation or the Branchwood facility. Anything else? Mike?
We received an announcement today from Mr. Bailey regarding Ms. Christy Addlesey, who's going to be leaving staff a week from Friday. And I just wanted to thank Chrissy for all the hard work she's done supporting the Communications Committee, all the hard work she does with the news releases and for us on the board. I really appreciate your help.
That I'd like to mention is it's always very nice to have membership get involved in activities that benefit the community and in the POA. There's a Labor Day golf tournament called Dollars for Dogwood. It's taking place on Monday, September 1st at Dogwood Hills Golf Course. It's an event that is designed to raise some money for some improvements to the landscaping around the clubhouse. There's a $60 entry fee, and of that $60, that includes lunch prizes and a donation towards the course enhancement and improvement projects. You can sign up on the website. You can call Bob Nellis, who's the golf committee, contact at 268-6409 if you need any additional information. We have 2 more informational sessions regarding the assessment vote. The first one is Tuesday, August 26th at 6 p.m. at Reardon Hall, and Wednesday, August 27th at 10 a.m. at Reardon Hall. The next GM board first Thursday will be held on Thursday, September 4th at 2:30 p.m. in the Country Club boardroom. This is a closed discussion meeting. The September Board of Directors work session is Thursday, September 11th at 8 a.m. Public meeting. We'll have the announcement of the assessment vote with a special meeting of members Thursday, September 18th at 6 o'clock. And the next Board of Directors regular meeting for September is Thursday, September 18th at 6:30 in Reardon. Any other items? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, we adjourn.
All in favor? Thank you.